We all feel them. The forbidden, the sinful, the taboo. Behaviors that divide cultures and inspire fear. But our differences may be what make us all human.
For all of us, death is the ultimate question. The great unknown.
I believe there's a soul. I think it's a process you born, you procreate, and then you die.
Death is the first mystery. It's the edge beyond which life as you know it ends, and wonder begins. And how a people deal with that inexorable separation between life and death invariably determines their mystical worldview.
While some mourn and others celebrate, all seek to do right by the dead. But what one society views as the perfect end, another calls taboo. In this hour, attend a funeral in Indonesia that takes months to prepare. And until it's ready, the corpse lives with the family. Journey to India with a cast of untouchables whose only escape is their own death. Meet an American businessman who makes a good living by cutting up the dead. And wonder, what do you want to happen with your body when you die? In the land of Toraja, a remote region of Indonesia, cliffside effigies and graves testify to a culture as obsessed with death as ancient Egypt. While the majority of Torajans are Christian, many still hold ancient animistic beliefs. Funerals are the most important rituals in their culture.
Death is this extraordinarily pregnant moment, and a society both fears it and must deal with it.
Canadian anthropologist Wade Davis is a National Geographic explorer in residence.
The ritual elaborations that go along with the transition into death become so incredibly important to a society.
Here in Toraja, caring for elders continues into death. Beloved relatives receive their favorite dishes 3 times a day, even after they are dead. Torajans don't immediately bury the body of a family member. They keep the embalmed corpse and treat it as if it is still alive. It's a practice many cultures might find shocking. But families here prefer to wait until they can afford to throw a lavish funeral. And that may take months, even years.
If a family doesn't have enough money to complete its obligations, it must maintain the illusion or the pretense that the man, or woman, even if he is physically deceased, is still socially of the group, because we as a society are not prepared yet to dispatch him into the realm of the dead. And if we were to do so improperly, we would disgrace him, dishonor him, but also disgrace ourselves.
Agus Lamba is shopping for a gift for the funeral of his great aunt.
I'm looking for the pigs because I'm going to bring it to the funeral ceremony because my auntie is died last year.
Agus is not wealthy, but he's expected to spend as much as he can.
The face is okay, and the ear is fine as well.
This pig will cost him several weeks' salary. Agus's great aunt, Mrs. Mendon Dalipang, died almost a year ago. Ever since, her body has resided at her family home. Even in her casket, she is considered sick, not dead. Mrs. Dalipang was a member of the noble class and had a large, influential family. People here believe her spirit demands a lavish funeral.
Many human societies think that death does not stop the life that was lived. It merely changes it. It takes it away from those of us who remain. It makes it intangible, but it doesn't end the life.
Christopher Davis is an anthropologist at the School for Oriental and Asian Studies in London.
It's one of the ways in which most religions mark extreme spiritual maturity is in a capacity to actually accept death.
We are all relatives, and see this, the plus relative, cousin, brother, sister of the dead person will carry
Relatives lift the massive coffin, which resembles a traditional Turajan house. They carry her almost a mile from her home to the field where her funeral will take place. Natalia Dalipang is August's cousin and Mrs. Dalipang's granddaughter.
Kami sebagai cucu-cucu daripada nenek. As for the grandchildren, suatu kebanggaan juga. We are very proud to be able to give our best through a ceremony like this one. Melalui pesta tersebut kepada nenek kami. It is our last chance to pay tribute to our grandmother.
It takes 3 hours for the funeral procession to reach the ceremony field. For her family and friends, this is the moment when Mrs. Dalipang's spirit leaves her body. But her spirit will need help reaching paradise, which they call puya.
To deal with a dead soul properly is your duty, and if you don't, then the dead soul is going to be in distress and may come back to bother you, to create disruption in living society.
Mugalika Banerjee is an anthropologist at University College London.
The need to conduct these rituals properly is very much about maintenance of social order in this world too.
Because of Mrs. Dalipang's noble status, her children will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to give her a proper funeral. The event is so big and elaborate, the family has hired funeral planners who manage the ceremonies. Everywhere, from the gold leaf decorating their mother's coffin to the hired entertainers, the family's wealth and prestige are on display.
Orang yang tidak mengerti akan mengatakan bahwa some people who don't understand our culture may see this ceremony and say that we are wasting our resources and money. This is our custom, and it would be impossible for us to simply do away with it.
Turajans believe that the more lavish the funeral, the easier it is for the soul to reach paradise. And family members aren't the only ones expected to contribute. 1,000 guests gather on the sacred field. Many will stay for several days. Mrs. Dalipang's children want their mother's spirit to have the same status in paradise that she enjoyed on earth. To that end, they also plan to sacrifice many water buffalo, symbols of wealth. People here believe the more they send with Mrs. Dalipang, the easier it will be for her to enter paradise, and the more blessings her spirit will bestow upon them. Before the sacrifices, buffalo fights provide the funeral's most dramatic entertainment.
It's hard sometimes, and it's dangerous. Sometimes they hit people.
Guests enjoy it at their own risk. Agus has a close call.
The buffalo almost hit me, hit my nephew, so that's why we moved, and the buffalo ran away and hit the lantern.
People here believe the spirits of these buffalo will accompany Mrs. Dalipang to paradise. Coming up, an entourage into the afterlife requires a mass slaughter. And later, in India, the dead are reborn through a very public cremation. And an American businessman attains the good life by cutting up the dead. In Indonesia, a dead woman's corpse has lived with her family for nearly a year and is finally headed to the grave. Agus is Mrs. Dalipang's great-nephew. Although he's not a close relative, he's decided his original gift of a pig is not generous enough.
I changed my mind. Before, I buy pigs, and now I'm buying a buffalo.
But even the least expensive buffalo costs $1,500, several months' pay. Agus's brothers and sisters are chipping in, otherwise he could never afford it.
I feel this is already more than enough for the family of the dead person. Yeah.
To societies that don't impose such burdens, it might seem an exorbitant expense. But this is about more than a funeral.
Every culture faces these same transitional moments: birth, initiation, marriage, death. And so how you celebrate those, the intensity with which you do so, the amount of money or wealth that you display at that time, it ties into all kinds of issues of your social status, of your place in society, and that's found all over the world.
For August, the buffalo is not just a gesture of thanks to his great aunt, it's also an investment in the future. As in many cultures, Turajan funerals are practical affairs, used to cement relationships among the living. At the ceremony field, each gift is announced and logged. The guests pay back Mrs. Dalipang for her generosity in life, and also expect that her survivors will eventually repay their gifts. Arthur, Mrs. Dalipang's son, accepts his cousin August's offering. Arthur can choose to sacrifice the buffalo, keep it for himself, or sell it to cover the funeral expenses. And now Arthur is obligated to August. He must repay the gift when August dies.
Sunday when I have ceremony also, here or in Nangala, Tabato will come also give me another buffalo, the same size.
The time has come to send Mrs. Dalipang her transportation to paradise. Her spirit entourage will include dozens of border buffalo.
According to our belief, we sacrifice more buffalo because the spirit of the buffalo will help the spirit of the dead person. They carry and they go through the valley and mountain till to the Puya, we call Puya, or paradise. Yeah, just to get to the good place is difficult.
The mourners sacrifice almost 100 buffalo.
The idea of sacrificing a bull at a funeral is the idea that you are giving of yourself something in order to get something back in return. The idea that if you make these offerings to the gods will respond in kind by offering your relative whatever you seek.
The meat won't go to waste. Mourners can take it home. Finally, Mrs. Dalipang's family and friends are ready to bid farewell to her spirit. Even though she died months ago, it's a painful separation.
One of the things that the rituals are meant to do is to allow people to express their grief and their anger at death, at the loss, at being robbed of someone that they loved. And we need to acknowledge that it makes us feel this way and then try to get over it.
Mrs. Dalipang's family prepares her body for its final resting place. In a cliffside mausoleum, the family quietly inters the body. They seal the tomb against grave robbers.
Menurut saya dan menurut perasaan, I think and I feel my grandmother would be pleased with our efforts. This will allow her to depart in peace.
Nearly a year after her physical death, Mrs. Dalipang finally rests in peace. And a community has forged new bonds for the future. In many cultures, funerals are spectacles to celebrate the life that has ended.
It really comes down to how do you want to be treated? And that's why we are so sensitive to the handling of the dead.
How people handle their dead often tells a lot about how they view the world and the afterlife. But in many cultures, the job of tending dead bodies is viewed with distaste, even fear. What if the only job available to you was to burn the dead? Varanasi, India. Stretching along the sacred Ganges, it is Hinduism's holiest city. Millions of pilgrims come to bathe in the purifying waters. But others come for a far different purpose. They come here to burn the dead, out in the open, in public. For them, the city of light is also the city of death.
And the whole notion in both Hindu religion and certainly in Buddhism is that the body is just the vessel, and it's the soul that will come out, the spirit of the individual. Once the death occurs, the body is really quite irrelevant. The public cremation is a statement to the society at large that we are not just body.
Deen Dayal has a job that many might find appalling.
I have been doing this since I was 10.
I started liking it. My parents left this, and I started. And once I did it, I liked it, and have been doing it ever since.
Theme may like his work, but he didn't choose it. It chose him. Theme belongs to a unique Indian caste or community, known as the Domes. It is the traditional role of the Domes to cremate the Hindu dead. Members of Theme's family have been burning corpses for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years.
This is our occupation, and so we like it. The people who sow wheat, sow rice, and work in the fields do it irrespective of whether there is sun or rain. Their job is to grow the grains. Burning bodies is our profession. Unless we do this, how will our kids eat anything? If our parents had not done this, why would we do it? This has been our tradition.
In India's caste system, the Dome community is untouchable.
The Domes are at the bottom, really, of the caste hierarchy. People who do jobs linked to death, linked to animals, linked to human waste. These are all people who are untouchable and outside the caste hierarchy.
For devout Hindus, touching a corpse is highly taboo. It is a ritually polluting act. Those who work with the dead are considered unclean, and therefore untouchable.
Nobody will give us any other work. Even if we go somewhere, people recognize us as Dome and drive us away. Who will drink water from our hands? Who will eat from them? We are not people who can give you water to drink. We are an untouchable community.
They are outcasts, but the Domes also play a pivotal role in the Hindu approach to death, which is based on the idea of reincarnation. Hindus believe every human soul passes through many lives. The ultimate goal is to unite with the Supreme Being, but until they are worthy, they continue to be reborn.
This is the aspiration of all humans, to be liberated from this endless cycle of being born again and again and again.
The holy city of Varanasi provides a kind of spiritual shortcut. Hindus believe that if they die here and their ashes are scattered in the Ganges, their souls are liberated from the cycle. While reincarnation involves many lives, its goal is similar to that of other religions, life beyond death.
Every society around the world has this dream of eternity, this dream of resurrection, this dream of rebirth. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to realize why that would be so common around the world.
Coming up, untouchables tend to sacred fire and scavenge among the ashes. And later, in the US, death is a good business if you can master the tools. In Varanasi, India, Deen Dayal is a dome worker whose job is to burn corpses to ashes. Other cultures move dead bodies out of sight and often into a grave as quickly as possible. Here, cremation is considered necessary to liberate the soul.
Cremating a corpse is a statement about destroying the materiality of the body in order also to let the soul free.
When the corpse is destroyed, they douse the fire with water from the Ganges, the sacred river which will also receive the ashes. Hindus believe that only by this process can the soul achieve liberation and enter heaven. Ranjit Chowdhury is known as the King of the Domes. He controls the death industry along the Ganges. Ranjit oversees the Dome community and manages their affairs. His family traditionally handles the money and distributes it between the Dome families.
It has been going on since our forefathers' time, so it is our business. A grocer sells rice and grains, a cloth merchant sells cloth. Just like they have their businesses, we have ours.
The Domes work as a team. While some build pyres and oversee cremation, others scavenge among the ashes and coals. Whatever touches the dead is theirs to keep.
The body we have to burn usually has gold and jewelry on it. We sift and take it. The women have nose rings. The men have chains and finger rings. We take the gold and silver off the body.
Few people challenge the Dome's right to scavenge.
human social order that the people who are often the lowest and who are the most contaminated are also the most quote-unquote contagious. They have a certain kind of power. People also feel threatened by them, so it's a very ambiguous sort of status.
Thien works the day shift, but the fires never cease. The bodies continue to burn all through the night. Spending the night with the dead might seem like a frightening task.
We get habituated to it and don't get scared. Whether we are here or on the other side of the river, we can stay alone in the cremation grounds and we don't get scared. We keep turning the bodies like this. Fire can melt even iron. This is just a corpse.
The tombs are an untouchable caste par excellence because their entire life's work is to deal with the impurity of death, which is considered to be the most impure state that any human being can find himself or herself in. And they serve probably the most important religious function in many ways in Hindu society because somebody has got to do it. And they act as a vessel for this extreme impurity.
The fires continue into morning as more bodies are brought down to the river. Thien takes up his post again and immediately begins building a funeral pyre. His first customers have arrived. The family of the deceased gathers around as Thien works. Although he is an untouchable, Thien commands a degree of respect here. Upon death, even the highest caste Hindus must entrust him with their bodies and souls.
Whether it is the Prime Minister or the President, if they come here, until they get the fire from us, nothing can get done.
The domes are the keepers of the sacred flame. Hindus must purchase a coal from this fire to light their funeral pyres and send their loved ones to heaven.
The importance of the fire is that it has been going on for ages. From the time of Kalu Dome and King Harishchandra, the fire has been going on.
It is the traditional role of the firstborn son to set fire to the body. But first he must shave his head and dress in white robes. Thien leads this firstborn son to the sacred flame. Across cultures, children bear special responsibilities at a parent's funeral.
One of the things that I think is taboo throughout the world, or frowned upon throughout the world, is a child who does not honor his parents at the time of their death. People always have a debt to the dead in the sense that the dead are their ancestors.
Thien leads the man through the Puncha Kurma, the ritual of circling the body 5 times. And then they set fire to the corpse. Roughly 80% of Indians are Hindus. Thien knows he'll never lack for work. In fact, just above the river are people waiting to use his services. Waiting to die.
You have a tradition of people when they get old to want to go to Varanasi because they think their death is near. This often has really been manifested most of all amongst Hindu widows, outcast by society on the death of their husband. If you die in Varanasi, you have ensured that your end is in a holy place and your soul is set free in a holy place.
And so they wait for death and liberation from the cycle of lives. As members of the lowest caste, the domes too seek liberation. Burning bodies is Thien's only means of survival. He lives a Hindu paradox. The only way for him to escape the death industry is to die and be reborn into a higher caste.
I think every Hindu, whether untouchable or not, lives in the belief and hope that they will be born into a better life.
For now, the fires will continue to burn.
As long as there is the earth, sky, stars, and this world, people's faith will remain unshaken, and they will keep coming here to die and find salvation.
In the city of death, life goes on. To Hindus, the dead must be destroyed, so the next life can begin. But in many cultures, a loved one's body is sacred, even after they have passed on. Desecration of the dead is unthinkable. But what if someone you loved died mysteriously, and the only way to find answers was to cut up the body? The corpse. In most parts of the world, it is sacred, feared, revered. The object of elaborate ritual. But for this American, Vidal Herrera, each cadaver is a commodity. He makes his living doing autopsies, cutting up dead bodies to find the cause of death.
Death has been very good to me. It's very successful. I have gone from making $50,000 a year now in the low six figures. But it's a recession-resistant business, and our business is going to skyrocket. No matter what, people will always die.
Los Angeles, California. In a town obsessed with the perfect body and eternal youth, death is the last thing on their minds.
Well, it's hard to think about death when you live in such a beautiful place like Southern California. It's something that happens to grandparents and everybody else. All the money and all the plastic surgery, and then one day you put it in a box. I mean, it's kind of a waste.
But even the beautiful people can't avoid the inevitable. And that makes death a good way to earn a living. In 2001, California's death care industry made almost $1 billion.
Here's looking at you, kid.
What is this? Is this really what you do?
We do autopsies.
Vidal Herrera has made a lucrative career out of death. And on Halloween, a holiday for ghouls and goblins, he puts it out there for all to see.
We have coffee mugs, t-shirts, scrub gowns, pens. Popular item, I don't know why, but it's a little miniature guillotine.
In many cultures, cutting up a dead body is not just sacrilegious, it could also be dangerous.
There are very few cultures in the world that do not revere their dead, that do not treat their dead with huge respect. And so to have someone who is slicing up the dead is about as low as you can get in the eyes of most of the world.
Herrera runs a private autopsy business for families who want to find out how a loved one died. It is a uniquely American phenomenon. Every year he puts 40,000 miles on his van, shuttling to morgues and cemeteries. He fills a niche that used to belong to hospitals, before cost-cutting and lawsuits forced many out of the autopsy business. In many cultures, a mysterious death may trigger fears that the soul is not at rest.
One of the most common responses to death is the idea that the dead wield power in the realm of the living, that they can come back, that if the process of the burial and the ritual accompanying the burial is not adequate, appropriate, that we will be haunted by that inadequacy.
While other cultures might call in a priest or shaman for help, some Californians hire Vidal Herrera. Still, Herrera had to figure out how to sell something most people don't even like to talk about.
How does one advertise death? Because essentially that's what we're doing. One day I saw a TV ad, 1-800-DENTIST. And I said, why not 1-800-AUTOPSY?
He plastered the toll-free number on his van, along with his nickname, El Muerto, which means the dead one in Spanish. In no time, he was swamped with calls. The headquarters of 1-800-AUTOPSY is Herrera's home in the outskirts of L.A.
Okay, so
His wife, Vicky, quit her job with the movie studios to help out when the business started booming. But she and her family pay a price for making money from the dead. My sons have been called devil worshippers, and we are sinners. We work with the devil. I understand their feelings, and that's fine. But someone's got to do it. Someone has to speak for the dead.
Even here in America, it's a controversial concept.
As far as just cutting open bodies and mutilating them, I don't believe in that.
The idea of being cut apart, even though you're dead, bothers me. I mean, this is your vessel through your whole life. So you don't like the thought of someone taking it apart and messing it all up.
But there's no shortage of work for the Herreras. A call comes in to 1-800-AUTOPSY. It could be a case.
My wife usually screens the calls, obtains the deceased name, next of kin, where the body is located, details of the death, medical history, etc.
You know,
We need to know if an autopsy really is necessary.
there's somebody on the phone on line 1 regarding her father. There's a problem in the hospital.
A woman's elderly father has died in a convalescent home.
Good morning, Dr. Hecker.
She suspects the facility neglected or abused him because his body is racked with bed sores.
What was he being treated for?
An autopsy could reveal evidence for a lawsuit. Coming up, El Muerto is on the case, and a corpse offers up its evidence. In Los Angeles, California, Vidal Herrera is investigating the death of an elderly man in a nursing home.
This particular case, the deceased had bed sores, which are commonly referred to as decubitus sores. We've had many cases where people have actually died because of the infection from these decubitus sores. And these are the kind of things people never really consider. And the only way to find that out is during the course of an autopsy.
Americans are not unique in their desire for answers about death. In some ways, finding out what happened is more for the living than the dead.
Human beings dwell in a world of meanings, and everybody would like to have a kind of narrative closure or a satisfaction in the story about the death. We're inclined to use autopsy because we feel that knowing how the person died will also tell us why they died.
Herrera's first step is to take photographs of the elderly man's body. He'll show them to a doctor, who will decide if an autopsy could provide additional evidence of abuse or neglect.
When we enter a morgue, you go to the back room, and there is a person there. You feel an aura there that somebody is there, and it's as though they're talking to you. You know, they're helping you find something, an answer to a puzzle. And that's really how you look at every case, because every body is different. Every body has an explanation.
Herrera has taken photos of the corpse. He'll take them to a pathologist, who will decide whether an autopsy is warranted. Herrera is not a doctor himself. He assists with the procedure. Autopsies are part of a unique science called forensics. As with any science, it employs highly specialized instruments to obtain data. Or in this case, to dissect a corpse.
These are the tools that we use during the course of the autopsy. We have many, as you can see. The most important instruments is scalpel and a retractor, because you can pull and cut at the same time. If you need to chisel small little things away, we have a little hammer and a chisel. Measure different diameter of bones, skin tissue. To remove the sternum, we use garden shears. We have larger knives to do what's called bread loafing, dissecting large organs like the liver, the brain.
Private autopsies, with a $2,000 to $5,000 price tag, are more than just a way to provide closure for families. They can be the key to winning big payouts from lawsuits.
There is a growing culture in the West for wanting to know the cause of everything, which is sort of coupled with a litigious culture of wanting to blame people for things.
We've had cases where surgeons have left gauze inside, suturing stitches have become loose, they've developed an infection, they bled to death. Those are basically the kind of things that we get, and it's always too late.
But for the family of the elderly man who died in the nursing home, it may not be too late to seek justice. The pathologist who works with Herrera has decided that an autopsy is warranted. Now the pathologist with Herrera as his assistant drive to a local morgue to perform the forensic autopsy. It could be a long night. Autopsies can take anywhere between 2 to 20 hours. In some cultures and religions where the human body is sacrosanct, what they're about to do would be considered taboo.
In other parts of the world, the body is normally closed, and only a sorcerer or somebody really evil would butcher a human being in the way you butcher an animal and therefore see the inside of the body. Probably in North Atlantic countries, and certainly in the States, the information is more sacred than the body. We want the information, and opening the body is the only way we can get it, and so that's what we do.
For Herrera, an autopsy is a window into death.
Well, you see the reality of death when you do an autopsy. You're one-on-one with a person, except they happen to be, they're dead.
Yes, adhesions to this pleural cavity.
You measure them, you feel them, the texture, the clamminess that they feel, the rigor mortis, the smell of the body.
The word autopsy means to see for oneself. That is what the pathologist in Herrera proceed to do.
We collected exterior tissue from the body.
That's what we start.
We reflect the skin sideways and upwards, exposing the sternum. We were taking chronological order photography of the injuries that we felt were legitimate injuries.
Signs of injury are critical to establish the family's case of abuse against the convalescent home.
And then we'll begin meticulously removing or dissecting the organs, the heart, the lungs, all the neck organs.
Next, they prepare to open the skull.
The hardest part will be removing the temporal bone. That's the hardest bone in the human body. That can be quite difficult. The bone is so hard, it's almost like a rock. You can break 2 or 3 blades, and the blades cost $75 a piece.
Great, thanks.
El Muerto has no patience for those who condemn what he does for a living.
Well, we deal with the facts. The facts are, that's a human body, that is the evidence. We have to collect it, document it, archive it. That's the only way we look at it.
I gave you some pennies, didn't I?
Yes, they may be Muslim, Buddhist, Jewish, whatever faith they are. To us, it's just a body.
And this body has now revealed its secrets. The results from the autopsy are in.
The pathologist determined that there was really foul play here. There was extreme negligence. So this will be reported to the coroner's office and the district attorney.
Now the family can decide if they want to pursue legal action.
The question always arises, why did a person die? And that's why they call us. From a family's perspective, this will really answer some of those agonizing questions. It's gonna really put closure to this.
For Herrera, death is more than a lucrative business. It's a calling.
I love it. I think it's fascinating. And really, it motivates me because I always want to find out the truth. 1-800 Autopsy's motto is the deceased must be protected and given a voice. Somebody has to stand up for patients that have died, and that's what we do.
Ultimately, death is something no one can understand until it happens to them. Our many questions about the dead are impossible to answer.
I think that when that last moment, that last bell begins to ring, I think everybody's got a few questions in their head.
All societies have developed ways to help deal with that existential uncertainty. Some celebrate a departing spirit. Others offer a door to another life, or help give survivors closure. In many cultures, when the living serve the dead return the favor.
There is this sort of cycle, this dynamic conversation always going on between the living and the dead. And we have very, very strong notions of keeping alive the memory of the dead, even in our own societies.
Connecting with the dead provides comfort for the living and reinforces the belief that we are more than flesh and blood. Just as arguments over religion can only be resolved by the divine, treatment of the dead will always raise controversy. It's up to you, your family, and your culture to decide what's a worthy ending and what's taboo.